Welcome to Lift Your Leg. This is Monique and Jill from the Naughty Dog in Victoria, BC, author of As a Dog Thinketh.
And Jill Brown from Calgary, Alberta, the bag lady.
And tonight we have with us
Matthew Twitty from Start to Finish Dog Training in Cherokee, Alabama. Hey, y'all.
Yay! Welcome back, Matty.
Hi, Jilly. So what are we talking about tonight?
We are talking about corrections. We just did a podcast which was questions from people. And from so many of the questions on there, it was quite clear that the forbidden topic of corrections, people have no idea how to correct anymore. So errors are being made with electricity, and in moments of dogs doing bad things, like people don't know what to do because they're being told they're not allowed to correct. It became apparent that this is the forbidden topic that needs to be discussed and talked about a whole lot more among trainers. So that's what we're doing.
Cool.
Yahoo!
Any comments before we start?
This is going to be a spicy topic.
Anything
for a
you
lot of
say
people.
can and will be held against you.
Exactly. I know, right? I know.
Yeah. But having said that, none of us use extreme corrections. We should be able to talk freely about it without getting people up in arms, other than the real purely positives that claim they don't use any corrections at all.
Corrections are used. Everyone's using them. Even those that say they don't they're just not aware of it. So why don't we have a educated discussion on what's right and what's wrong so that hopefully people can start navigating this much easier?
I had a really
Why don't
interesting
we?
lesson today. I had a really interesting lesson today with a dog that came to me that is working in open obedience, and the dog has had enough pressure, has had corrections, and I literally had to flip the script on this. And so I'm like, okay, she doesn't need more physical pressure. She needs more mental pressure. You have not taught this dog how to think. You've just bullied her around. So when we have this kind of dog, and I think we've all seen this kind of dog, where this is not the product of correction. This is the product of poor timing, poor reading, poor getting the dog in the right mental frame to learn. It has nothing to do with the training that was there. I actually was okay with what she wanted to do. I'm like, but your dog is not ready for that. Like, you did it backwards, like desire before control, especially when we're talking about competition. Now, in the pet world, I may flip that, control before desire. But in the competition world, I want it flip-flop so that I've got a dog that is pushing and giving me a lot of stuff. I think that how we do that and what we do can really make or break, and then it becomes the correction's fault, and it wasn't really the correction's fault at all.
I have a thought here. I believe that every single handler out there is either a gas pedal or a brake when it comes to their dogs. I'm a gas pedal. Jill, what are you?
I'd say I'm a gas pedal.
Matthew, what are you?
I'm an idle in neutral.
No, you're not. You might be a taught idle in neutral, because I would say as we get trained and we know ourselves, we can present as both, but our default is still one or the other.
I guess it depends on what I'm working, honestly. I've got a lovely German Shepherd here who's here to learn not to rock.
You're avoiding the question. What's your default? If you have your own beloved dog, are you more likely to lose control? Are you going to create a monster, or are you going to squelch the monster within? What's your default?
Well, I
create monsters.
I think that it's changed because through dealing with a dog like Gurley, I had to learn to let go. And once you learn to let go, then you want to do it a lot. You have to see the benefits of letting go and being that gas pedal. Because if you
whereas
don't,
I never have to see the benefits, I have to see the benefits of control. So you're a brake.
Idle and neutral, yeah.
So I think as we get advanced, we all learn to find central ground. But my default is always going to be to let my dogs get a little bit wilder, a little bit naughtier before I put control on them. Jill, what about you? Same?
I'm definitely that way in my competition training.
Yeah, in my sport, I'm definitely that way.
Yeah, in my domestics, I might be more of a brake.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I mean,
that's
my
why I said
dog's
idle and
breathing is
neutral.
always good.
Yeah. I think
No.
the end goal is to idle and neutral, to know where that place is. But I think even with corrections for myself, I always wait just a little bit too long before I'm going to put that pressure on.
And I probably go too early.
Whereas I think a natural break would go too early.
Yeah, I
So
tend
I
to
do
go a
think
little
it's
early.
important for everyone to know what they are first. You need to know if you're a gas pedal or a brake so that you know what your default is. Because some people we're going to be saying, whoa, ease off on the brake there. And others it's, whoa, slam it. Just hit that brake, get it done.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like it's the dog that tells us how to be? Like for me, like with once you learn to be a gas pedal or a brake, then it's up to the dog to decide what it needs. Right now, like I said, I got this great German Shepherd here, and he just needs gas pedal. I have a boxer that needs a brake, and so it becomes like individualized with the dogs. And I think that we
That's
learn.
learned, though. That's
Yeah,
us
you have to
learning
learn it.
to moderate ourselves. Yeah, it is. I have a little Rottweiler puppy here right now that is here for resource guarding. And holy doodle, they weren't kidding. She's really here for resource guarding. I thought she was going to take my leg off yesterday. And she's this tiny little fat blob. So I gave her a whole bunch of bones yesterday that were worthy of her trying to kill me. And then it became apparent through that there's no way I'm going to, with the determination and strength that she was showing that aggression, there is no way I would be able to stop her with a correction alone. It's not going to work. It's too far gone. She's 4 months old now. It's too far gone. And I can't believe I'm saying that with a 4-month-old. So yesterday we ended up going through a bag of lamb bones, and today I spent $70 on bully sticks, and we're now working our way through those. So we're on day 2, and I'd have to say we've made huge improvements, and it wasn't corrections that got us here. It was just her being in uncomfortable situations with the other dogs around her, with me around her, us not going away, and just more of them keep coming forward, so their value lost. So as we're talking about corrections, like they alone will not fix things. We're not saying go full out, go that direction. It still has to be in moderation, but if you are going to do it, you need to know how to do it.
And you also got to define the fact that for different dogs, different things can be a correction. For some dogs, putting them in a strange location is a correction. For some dogs, making them think through something, you're like, I'm not helping you, and I'm going to shape you for this. That can be a correction. For some, a pop on a collar can be a correction. Some, you scream at them and they go run to the next county. It's such a hard thing to define. I loved this topic. I was super excited to talk about it because there's so much to it.
I agree. So first, let's talk about life-threatening behaviors, because there's a big difference in my sport with Harry doing a sit wrong versus Rottweiler trying to take my leg off of me yesterday. So life-threatening behaviors of a dog or puppy that's doing something that's going to possibly end up with them getting euthanized. Let's talk about those.
Flight.
I don't know. What kind of
Flight.
corrections are we putting on dogs? There's different types of corrections.
I tend to use, I subscribe to what I call LIME, least invasive, most effective. So LIME is how I approach all corrections. It isn't necessarily always the right answer to go least, but it is the safest when you're teaching people.
Would you go least with life-threatening behaviors?
No, I would stop it immediately through whatever means necessary.
And I would add 3 more for the next few days to get me through it.
3 more for good measure. If that wasn't a Mia skunk, or if that wasn't Mia.
We can't blame Mia for correction. She's not allowed to be part of this one because of her country. So there's different types of corrections. So there's corrections that apply pressure, and there's corrections that apply indirect pressure. But I think for the pressure corrections and indirect pressure, both of them are appealing to the same type of dog. Maybe not. I love working with the dogs that respond to pressure, because not all dogs do.
No,
A working German Shepherd, a Rottweiler, they're not responding to pressure. They're probably going to move into it. I like the dogs boxers, we can add to that category too. I like the dogs that are going to say, sorry, that will give me space, which are going to be
Border
dogs with a little bit
collies.
more sensitivity. The herding breeds.
Yeah. Border collies, some
Border
Malinois.
collies, some Mallies, toy breeds, some terriers, but definitely not all. Jill's golden retrievers.
What are you laughing at me for now?
Because I
No,
said
she
your
just said,
dogs.
like, she didn't say all golden retrievers. She just said Jill's golden retriever.
That's true. Not all of them are sensitive.
With pressure, then there's different types of pressure, which you were just going on before. It could be me moving towards them. I'm going to use my body to make them back away. I'm going to chase them out a room if they're guarding a doorway or a gate, like one was in the last podcast we did. I'm going to make them back away if they want to fight a dog. What other scenarios are there?
Deny them. Like, you're going to deny them. You're going to hold food, and they're pawing and scratching and biting at your hand. You're just holding still. And you're like, look, you want this to change for you, then stop doing what you're doing.
That's more thoughtful than pressure, don't you think?
For some dogs, it really shuts them down. Like, I've seen a couple dogs that'll walk up and lay down. They're like, I can't handle that. So, like, I feel as we get into this more and more, the mental fortitude of a lot of dogs is changing, and it's lacking.
I think a dog like that shuts down because you stop the access to the food has just had a Pez dispenser as a trainer slash owner up until then. So the dog is
They stop the learning process where the dog couldn't actually use its brain to solve a problem. I think about coyote syndrome. And what I mean by coyote syndrome is there is nobody out there pointing the coyote to the direct spot in the chicken coop to get to all the chicken. The coyote has to figure that out. And there's so many people that are helping their dogs in distress. I don't even know how to say that. They just help to where the dog cannot perform anything without copious
mollycoddle.
Yeah, I'm seeing a ton of that, and it's, whoa, can we let the dog think? These are intelligent creatures. They are way smarter than people give them credit for, and if your dog was the coyote, let it figure out how to get to the chickens.
learned
Like, let it figure.
helplessness we're creating.
But a lot of dogs are shutting down from that. I call that brain punching. I can brain punch a dog that way. We used to call it free shaping, but now it's like brain punching because so many dogs can't do it.
Yeah.
Is it being just denied the games with a little bit of stress in puppyhood?
Yes.
Because people don't know how to play with their puppies anymore, as in they're either throwing a ball for them, that's it. No one's throwing them on the bed and running away, like adding that little bit of stress through the game. If you haven't listened to it, everyone needs to go and listen to Ivan Balabanov's podcast on play. It's quite brilliant.
Your latent learning podcast, just to throw that out there. The latent learning one was my favorite one that y'all have done. And partially because everything you said was so true. And it's like, there are people doing it. There's just no way to describe it the way that you guys did. And I thought it was brilliant. Latent learning is a huge deal that I think is being denied a lot of dogs.
I agree.
Yep.
And I think in that denial, we're now pushing for either a purely positive training to overcompensate for what they're lacking there, or you're going the opposite direction, going to compulsion, when the dog has never had freedom to know, okay, I have all these great things as long as I stick with my buddy, the human. And there's a lot missing with that. So I thought that was very brilliant. And it led beautifully into this conversation because corrections can stop a behavior, but sometimes
stop it fast too.
Yes, fast, for sure. But sometimes correction can be the motivator. Like, and so then we're talking at what anybody talks about corrections, everybody's talking about there's a physical something that has happened to the dog that I don't like, whether it's pain avoidance or it's the dog is licking and running away or it tucks its tail or it doesn't like something. There's lots of things in life that we don't like. Like, all of us experience that throughout our life. They're no different. But when we're talking about what is an actual correction versus what is motivational pressure, what is indirect pressure, what is absolute compulsion, there's so many categories here, and there's so many names by so many dog trainers that they name all this stuff, and it gets super confusing. That I think that everything physical with the dog is not a correction. And that has to be laid out because people think that if you, like, I took a cookie the other day and I thumped the dog on the head with it. I said, pay attention. I hit him with a cookie. Now, everybody loved it. They were laughing, and the dog was super offended. The dog, whoa, it starts licking. And everybody's like, that was such a nice way to do that. I'm like, not, the dog didn't feel that way. The dog didn't feel that way at all.
But it's a politically correct way to correct the dog.
It is. And dog trainers are having to get better about politically correct corrections. But at the same time, the reality of it is there are so many people that their dog comes in on a front and they reach down and they shook their dog's head. Yay, you're such a good boy. And the dog absolutely hates that. And then they're like, oh, my dog won't come in close on a front anymore. And I don't know why, because you keep doing that hideous thing that it hates that you think is a reward. The dog views it as a correction.
I'm going to keep us on track. Let's go back to life-threatening behaviors.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So if I'm seeing a life-threatening behavior in a dog puppy, I believe it is our social obligation to make sure that dog is aware that we would literally end their life if we see that again. Therefore, we need to go somewhat postal. I think we need to show more intent than they have in that moment. So we need to match their level of intensity and go up a couple of steps more.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And whatever we do physically in that moment is secondary to what we're feeling in our heart and our mind. You have to go in with presence in these moments. And I think presence is marking it with a verbal, counting 1,000 so there's not that frantic edge there, and then doing something physical to the dog in a calm manner. That to me is a correction with presence.
Calm manner is rough because this morning when the boxer grabbed a hold of one of my ducks, it was not calm at all. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, running across the yard. They were up against the fence. So I threw a feed bucket at the fence and it scared the dog off the duck. And so, like, calm is an interesting word because I knew exactly what I was doing, and what I was trying to do was break his focus off of his prey. But at the same time, like, I had an urgency to get there because this dog's literally, if he had a face, like a real face and not just a boxer mug, he would have eaten the duck. But thank God he had a boxer mug and he could not just swallow the duck.
Thank you. That was a super example of a correction right there. Thanks, Matty. So in those urgent moments right there, that's a moment of a correction. That's what it needs to be like. Just get it done.
Yeah. And this is a dog that I'm trying to build his confidence. So I hate the idea of correcting him, but there are just some things that are just not acceptable.
He cannot build his confidence by killing your duck.
Yeah, he told me, hey, look, I'm a little more confident today. I can chew on this bird. And I'm like, whoa, not that confident, buddy.
Okay, so we've talked life-threatening. So then there's the other levels of just dogs misbehaving in whatever way. I think the main one is we can apply pressure. So moving in, making them move away. There's many ways that we can apply pressure. Who wants to elaborate on applying pressure?
For the lack of anybody jumping in, right now, Larry, my German Shepherd buddy, who's been calm and sweet, I'm making him more of a beast. So the more riled up and wild I get talking to you guys, the more he starts spinning in his crate and he's like, I want out. I want him to want out and play with me, but he's not allowed to scream. So, like, just now when he started screaming, I walked forward to him and I put my hands up and I was like, hey. And he looked at me and he settled down and I backed off pressure. That's a beautiful example of pressure. Don't come through my doorway. Like when you do a body block, that's an example of spatial pressure. And these are all super effective. You don't have to get to throwing feed buckets and screaming and running like a banshee.
I think a big point to all of this is when you have dogs that are doing things that aren't life-threatening. You can easily address that without, like you said, throwing a bucket or losing your mind. If you haven't gone through the dog's life to that point, yelling about everything.
Good point.
That's a beautiful point.
When you need to raise your voice, it's going to make an impression.
And have meaning.
Yeah. My guys have learned, I think I learned this from Monique, don't do it, man. And that's enough to make them go, oh, I'm doing something wrong. What should I not be doing here? But if they were running across the street to chase a cat and there was a car coming and I bellowed, they'd hit the deck.
Mean voice was actually something I conscientiously taught Harry and Johnny as young boys, probably 4 months, 5 months old, because I have these two super strong males that I needed them to actually care about my raised voice, because otherwise they wouldn't have. So I backed it up with, I found a scenario and taught them that if mother yells, you best listen. And I think that's an important step for strong males of certain breeds.
It's also a big factor in a lot of dogs wanting to shut down in the ring, because a lot of people get nervous and they escalate their voice. They start
Yep.
screaming their commands, and now the dog's, whoa, who are you? And they start to feel a certain way about it.
Yep. Back to that, though, I do believe that we should train with the same volume of voice as we plan to compete with.
Yeah,
That was something I really learned from Peter, because he's training and he's out there and he's using full trial voice in training, which most people just don't do. So it's like, blut. And I think we all need to be doing that so that our dogs are used to what we're going to give them in the ring.
And then we have to be aware when we step in the ring if we're giving more than what we normally do in training.
True.
Like more volume, more oomph behind it.
Yep.
And some people need more oomph behind it, depending on the dog.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite ways of correcting is indirect pressure. What's a good example of this? Dog goes to lunge at another dog, and I'm not correcting him for lunging at that dog. I'm correcting him for pulling on a leash. Or German Shepherd I'm working with goes to lunge at a person, and I'm not going to correct him for lunging at the person. I'm going to say down and correct him for not downing. Even if he suddenly downs really fast, he still gets a correction for not downing. Or I guess Pippa with sheep, if she's doing something and it's wrong, is going to be lie down, but lie down's coming out in a corrective tone, not in a sweet tone. And that is indirect pressure. This is something that field people use a lot. If the dog makes an error, they get a hard sit. So indirect pressure is one I love. And what I love about indirect pressure is there is wiggle room if you make an error. So if my dog lunges at a person, I can't increase his aggression to people if I have bad timing here, because he's just getting a correction for not downing. So there's some safety there, and it does work.
It definitely works. When I was at my wits' end with my little Brandy dog, and she would whine on the downstay or on the sit stay, and I was like, everybody had given me all these suggestions, like babies on her feet and spray collars and all this stuff, and I was like, the only reason I want to correct her in a sit stay is because she moved. So I put a leash on her, and I went in the other room, and when she started whining, I pulled her out of position, and I walked in, and I said, hey, I think you forgot to sit, and I just put her back in sit. And the whining went away.
How very Sylvia Bishop of you.
I know. I thought that was before Sylvia, which I thought it was even cooler.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is absolutely something that Sylvia would do. I had a little wiener dog, Doxy, and he was in pet class, super cute little dog.
I
And
love
he wanted
sausage dogs.
he wanted to bolt out the door. And I just let him run out the door, and I shut his leash in the door, and I said, we're going to leave him out there for a little bit.
That is Sylvia 101. I
Yeah.
love that exercise. If you have a
And
dog that bolts out of doors, open it, let them bolt, and slam your handle on the inside as you close the door and just leave them out there. And Sylvia would have us all like partying on the inside and then just open up the door, let them come in again. And it only takes 2 or 3 times and they stop. I love
It took
that.
one time with him. He's like, I do not want to be out there by myself.
Yeah. It's such a good correction.
But that's an indirect correction as well. And they were brilliant. Those are brilliant. And there's a million of them that people have concocted or come up with that I think are absolutely brilliant ways to get your point across without ruining everything.
Yeah. I think all of the dogs that respond to pressure and indirect pressure are super fun dogs to train. The dogs I really dislike training are dogs that don't. Do we want to tackle those? Such as the boxer going after your duck.
Yeah.
Or the boxer in my building that went after another dog. It's a lot harder if it's dogs that don't respond to pressure. So generally, these are going to be the true working dogs, German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, Boxers. God, there's so many more. I just can't think of them off the top of my brain right now. Those dogs are not as much fun to train because they don't care about pressure. They move into pressure. They don't move away from it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's where when we talk about Lyme, least invasive, most effective, you've got to get to the most effective part, especially with some of these dogs that are just super, either A, they don't feel pressure, or B, they're desensitized to pressure. You get
Or
that.
they enjoy pressure.
Yeah, you've got that too. And then you've also, on top of that, you've got these dogs that are not food motivated. They're not toy motivated. They're independent. A lot of the guardian breeds come into play here. Your Mastiff type dogs, your Cane Corsos, your Dogos, and we're seeing a lot of these dogs, seeing a ton of them.
Yeah, they're not that fun. So all of these dogs, they're going to require positive punishment. So a correction that's being added as a consequence of behavior. That's these dogs. So it's going to be a physical correction of some type that you're doing as a consequence. One that Gary Wilkes always used to use was his rolled up kitchen towel.
The bonker.
The bunker. That works well. Because if you mark it like A, pause, and then bonk them on the forehead with your towel, it looks politically correct. It still has its time and place, so long as you're thinking the right thoughts. This is one of those you can't lie to a dog. So if you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to hit him, then don't even bother because it won't work.
I like paper towel.
What was that?
A roll of paper towel.
Yeah.
or a pool noodle.
Pool noodle. That's where I was going with this one. And the other one that's politically correct is pet corrector.
I do love them. And, I watched Tyler Muto use one when I first started deciding to use one. He had a video where he had used one, and it was so cool to watch him, how he's a really good dog trainer. And so
he really is.
It's fun to watch good dog trainers take hard dogs and truly work them, not just show you great clips. Like, nobody cares about those clips of dogs just doing mindless things like eating out of a box or whatever. But
spinning around you.
Yeah, when I saw Tyler working this pit bull with the pet corrector, I'm like, that is brilliant. And I've been using them ever since. And I find that it's got about an 80% success rate. There is some 20% dogs that just don't care. But if you get a dog that doesn't like it, it's an absolute wonderful tool.
My rule of things like this are if I've told them A, stop it, and then I reach into my pocket to get it, and they stop as soon as they see my hand move to reach in my pocket, you must follow through.
Yeah. No threats.
Yeah.
Words
no idle threats.
Yeah, words have to have value. They have to have it's like a bank. If I'm going to use the word, if I say, you know better than that, if I say that to my dog, they want to run. And most of the time it's because I'm about to correct them physically. And if I say those words, there's always a correction. I don't care how cute you are or what you offer me, there's always going to be a correction.
This is the part that makes me so annoyed with the current climate of dog training, where you need a trainer who would never raise their voice, who will only make it fun in games, blah, blah, blah. I love dogs and I love working with dogs. And trust me, I would rather never have to correct one ever again. My life would be much more fulfilled. If we didn't have to, we wouldn't. If there was a better way, we would be using it. But there isn't. What we're being touted as science falls short, and those dogs are ending up on death row, or they're ending up complete messes on medication that can't go anywhere with very small lives because they can't even go on walks anymore and can't cope with daily life.
And this
So
has bred the internet savvy e-collar using dog squashing trainers that are on every corner. That's what this has bred. That's what has happened. The positive group has truly, and this is just honest to goodness, has given these people their platform. So they've done
and they've
more harm.
silenced the middlemen, which are
Right.
us.
Yeah.
And I think us middlemen need to speak up again, because
Yeah. Fine.
now we have the two extremes. We have, you cannot yell at a dog or you'll wreck your relationship with them and they'll never talk to you again. Harry begs to differ. He gets yelled at daily and finds it quite funny. Versus the dogs or the people on the complete other stream that are just thugs. And
Yes.
I have nothing to do with thugs. Like, I cannot relate to that way of dog training. I do
No, I
not
love
want to control my dog's every single thought and correct him into every single thing. That's not why I have dogs. There's middle ground here, but the middle people have been silenced.
Absolutely. And you have to risk being hated to talk about it. Like, you have to risk knowing that who you started with, you're not going to finish with. And that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, so they don't be themselves and they hide who they are, or they just don't talk about it. It's you can't have it both ways. We either talk about what really is good and what works and why it works, or we let people that have no clue and who are in basically a cult of theology, then we let them take over. Or when they take over, the other side, the other extreme side comes in and says, since you guys aren't handling the dogs correctly and all these people need help, we're going to make bukus of money just frying dogs with an e-collar. And I'm not
Yeah.
anti e-collar. I'm just saying this is what happens. Like,
I'm anti them being used in that way.
I am anti a lot of people that use them using them. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't use one typically. I do own one, but I don't. It's not my tool. One, I'm a lazy dog trainer, so I don't want to grab it. I don't want to charge it. Like, I just don't want to. And two, I'm gonna have to wean off all these tools and things like that. So I'd rather.
The problem I'm seeing is the two extremes, the purely positive and the thugs, are all about increasing followers.
Yeah.
I agree.
They want more people, they want the numbers, they're just in it to make money. The people that are in the middle, like us,
A hungry.
are in it exactly.
Starving.
We're starving, but we want to help the dogs. And if that means we're going to lose some people, it means we're
Yep.
going to gain some people, like whatever. That's not our end goal.
And we'll keep training dogs whether we get paid or not.
Yeah, I'm gonna train dogs until they put me in
Until I
the ground.
can't.
Yeah.
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 You have
I
to
mean,
wheel me away.
there's so many things that can be said for how to apply a correction, but can we go back? Can we talk e-collar for a minute? Can we talk it like is that
Absolutely. Go ahead.
okay? So like when we see so many dogs that come to basic obedience class, and the first, and I'm like, look, we're not going to be using an e-collar in this class, and everybody goes to confession. They're like, we bought one. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, look, there's a lot of prep work to using a collar. One, your timing has to be impeccable. And I watched you walk in here, so let's not do that, okay? You have to risk being offensive in order to make the point of this is a bigger deal than you think it is. And so I'm not anti e-collar at all. And I get painted that way sometimes, partially because it's just not something I use. I don't use it. I probably have used an e-collar once this year on a client dog. I didn't even use it on my own dog. I love the way that an e-collar works. So I can apply pressure, think through the pressure, think through the pressure, think through the pressure. The dog thinks through the pressure and that stops. I can do that without electric stimulation. Now, can I do that with every breed of dog? No. And there are some breed of dogs that you're not going to train to any reliable amount of control without it. We talk about e-collars, like, they have their place here.
One group that's greatly not talked about that needs corrections are the hounds.
Yes.
Sight hounds and scent hounds. We always think about German Shepherd, Pit Bull, Rottweiler. What about the hounds? Because without e-collar, their quality of life is very small because they're not going off leash.
Yeah.
And these
Ever.
are all dogs with great independence that need that freedom. They need to be able to roam, run, use their noses, follow their noses, or run their little legs off. And without that ability, their life just never is as enjoyable as it could have been.
Yeah, I agree.
There just has to come a point where you cannot be married to tools or not tools, or food or not food. You can't be married. This isn't a marriage. We're trying to communicate with another species. And let's face it, we rarely communicate with our own species very well. We're already charting in rough waters.
Yep.
So the thought that we're going to cut out any communication tool is simply insane. Like, it's insanity.
An e-collar has the possibility of improving quality of life for dogs. And as with any training, if it can improve their quality of life, I'm up for it.
I agree.
And Jessica and I went to see a friend before we moved up here that had a pretty rough German Shepherd. The dog had bitten several people, and they wanted us to go see the dog and evaluate him. And he was a loose cannon. He was definitely a loose cannon. And he was the last dog I really did some work with an e-collar. And he got out of his crate in a soft muzzle and bit my wife. And here I am, like, I'm putting the wings on the e-collar, and I'm like having to take my wife out of the house and check her wound and all these things. When I went back the next day to deal with him, and he's doing what started the bite just to begin with, the circling and biting, barking in his crate, I just was like, enough. And I hit him with one, and it's all it took. He was totally an absolute wuss when he didn't have the upper hand. And it changed everything. We were able to take him for a walk and love on him. And hold on, that's all it took was one go. He really didn't have the mental fortitude. He'd been built up from all of the previous bites. He'd learned to bark and people would leave.
Harry is a dog that if Harry is in a crate and starts fretting, as he starts barking, squeaking, as he gets going, he works himself up into a state. So the more he's allowed to bark, the worse he gets until he's wide-eyed and panicked. And he'll do the same in a dog run, same in a crate, if he's allowed to bark. He's just one of those dogs. And I've worked with several others since, because now I see this pattern. If I can stop him on the first bark, he can be calm. But as soon as he's allowed to bark, he'll work himself up into a tantrum. And then he's angry and
And so
panicked
how are
and
you going
all
to
the
do
rest of
that?
it.
I went to somebody that deals with, like, your back and your muscles and stuff, and they use a TENS unit. And it's literally an e-collar. Like, that's what it is. It's a TENS unit. And I'm sitting here loving my TENS unit little session. And I went and actually bought one. I bought me a TENS unit. And when I get home, I'm like, I could have just used my e-collar. I literally could just put it on my shoulder and been like, tap, that feels great. The
I
amount
did
of
ask my vet if I could use an e-collar for Rupert instead of a TENS unit. There was no response.
I imagine that.
Connie Cleveland used to have an amazing write-up on how to condition a dog to an e-collar. Are there any other people out there putting free,
like
good
Tyler.
information out there on how to teach a dog an e-collar?
I like Tyler. Tyler has a video.
Does he
on
have
it.
stuff? Okay.
He did. I haven't looked at it in ages, but when he had the best that I had ever seen somebody do.
I have a write-up on it
Yeah.
that one of my friends did. I don't know if it's her very own or if she got it from someone.
Want to screenshot it so I can stick it with the notes here?
Yeah, because it's step by step, and it makes it so clear to the dog and makes it so clear to the people, even people that have never used one before.
Because I think that's what's missing is they're so forbidden. So no one's really teaching the subtleties of it.
Yeah.
And those are getting
people go
lost.
on. I mean, I had a
Yeah,
lady show up with an e-collar that was controlled by her phone.
I know.
I was
I
like, "What
know.
is that?" And she's like, "It's an app. You just download it." I'm like, "No, I am not prepared for this.
For the 10-second delay.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not prepared for this."
depending on your Wi-Fi.
I know. Terrible.
Oh
I'm like,
man.
"No, I'm not prepared for this. I'm not
Yeah.
prepared."
Yeah. I will send you that write up, and
Thank you.
you can put it in there. Yeah, it's very good.
That's what we need is people that know what they're doing and have a heart
Yeah.
and have feel and timing who are willing to share their process. Connie Cleveland used to have a great article on it. But other
Connie's
than that one, I haven't read any others.
Connie's really good about sharing stuff. I think that people are, like I said, the moderate are getting squashed, and that's
We are.
just thing.
If you
Because
guys listening out there have a good article on how to teach ecollar or videos on it, send it to me and I'll add it to the notes here for this podcast because
I
people
loved
need to
Michael.
learn how.
I loved Michael Ellis's leash pressure. I loved so like when we go back now, pedaling back to pinch collar. I liked Michael Ellis doing that, and I think it was free. I think you can go out there and find it for free. There are people that do try to put stuff out. It is not easy to take
Yeah.
time out of your day and you're busy, but this kind of stuff is more fruitful than even the competition stuff because most competition trainers have feel, they've got some timing, they've got that kind of thing.
This is the
They're-
domestics that are being missed.
Yes.
That it's
Yeah.
not being talked about and it's being left in the dust and people are missing. Okay, let's talk about tone of voice, people. And with corrections, there's different levels of sins that our dogs commit. There's a behavior that could get the dog euthanized. So trying to attack me, bite me, savage another dog in my house, that kind of shit, that's not going to fly. And my dog might end up dead. So there's a certain level of seriousness and corrections that's going to happen for that. It's very different to minor sins in the house or minor sins in life.
like stealing the tenderloin off the counter.
Yeah, sizzle, so awful.
Oh, nice try. Oh.
Or
She
Pippa
would,
licking the plate
she
that
would
somebody's playing.
never.
Sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
I said, or Pippa licking somebody's dinner plate. Those were all fun.
That's not a sin. That's useful. She's doing dishes.
Reggie bringing his half-dead chicken leg to bed with me. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Get off the bed, you freak of nature.
Also not a problem. He was sharing it with you. We have different ideas about this.
We do very much.
All right, so going back to this, tone of voice. Let's discuss tone of voice. Emotion should be displayed through our tone of voice. So you should have happy, neutral, driving instructor, such as Mia says. And then there should be evil. They should know with certain tone of voice, oh, she's unhappy. And they should just stop dead, whatever they're doing.
Yeah. They should know when they've crossed the line.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can use
what's the matter?
Yeah. With that tone of voice, you need to match it with presence because so many of my people say to me, I got on him and he just laughed and continued. And the reason is because they don't believe you.
Yeah.
So your mind has to match your heart on this one. You need to actually believe, like, you will not do that again.
I will kill you, dog.
I know. I do believe that there's a big difference between some men and some women on this one. I think men are much better at this than women are
I agree.
because if
'Cause
I
I'm a dude.
pick my dog up, my first thought is, oh, make sure you don't hurt him. Make sure you're careful there how you hold his ear. Meanwhile, the dog like eliminates my thumb.
Yeah.
And all I'm worried about is how I'm holding his ear so I don't hurt him. And I don't believe that most men think that way. And we need to be able to override this as women and just get the job done and stop worrying about their eye because
It's very simple.
Their ear?
You have to think
Yeah.
end goal. Think
Yeah.
end goal. Don't think about like when I do like circle control and the dog's leg gets wrapped in its leash, everybody wants to stop and fix the leash. I'm like, he got his leg tied in there. Let him figure out how to get the damn leg undone. Keep walking. That's not the goal to stop. You're not releasing pressure because he was stupid and jumped on his leash, and now his leash is under his leg. Keep walking.
And likewise, though, not only keep walking, but forget the leg and do your job.
Yes.
Get the job done. Forget that leg that's caught up in that leash. And
You're not break his leg. I've never seen it happen. That
it's
doesn't
hard
happen.
for us women. Oh, but it will now. We've said that.
It will. When it does, somebody's gonna be school. This dog, and I'm like, dear God, internet, no.
I'm not doing any on-leash training for the next 3 days.
I think the last kind of correction to discuss is passive versus active corrections. I am an active corrector, very much so. I don't like doing passive corrections. And when I see people doing passive corrections, I always in my head label them as dog stranglers.
Define
Sorry.
Define your two, because I'm not completely familiar with your version of this. So go ahead.
An
What you just
active
said,
correction is me just get the job done, whereas a passive correction is slow, calm, delayed. Lift your dog onto its tiptoes, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, put him back on his full feet, that kind of thing.
Mm-mm.
That's why I label it dog strangler. Sorry. There is a time and a place for it, and I'll never say I won't do it because that means the next 10 dogs that walk through my doors will all need it, but it's not my go-to. I don't like doing it.
I think that when you teach a dog leash pressure, that would be what, as you called a passive, because you're holding pressure on the collar until the dog yields into the pressure. And
It's more going to be like a dog tries to bite me, so I need to hold him just on his tiptoes for the count of 3, 5 before I put him back down again. That's all.
Yeah, you might want to wait until he stops struggling trying to eat you like that.
Exactly. That would be passive. So if he's coming up to eat me, rather than giving like an active pop with a collar or whatever, like an active correction, I'm just passively waiting for him to stop. That's a passive correction. And it does work well with dogs that have aggression towards their handlers. It does work well with some dogs that have reactivity. It's just not my go-to. It's always my last choice.
I honestly don't know the last time I would have used one of those.
Yeah,
You're the same as me.
to me, that's like nagging.
I deal with so much competition though, so like that, there's really not a place other than teaching yielding to leash pressure that I can think of.
We'd
That
never do this in competition.
Yeah, I would never think of any of those as a competition correction.
Yeah. But yeah, I would just
I
done,
agree.
get it over with, be done. Yep.
I think maybe for very frantic handlers, this is a better way of correcting. But again, I'm not a fan. I don't like it.
Yes. Now that you defined it your way, I'm like, okay, I don't recall me ever using a passive correction like that.
I've never seen you.
I think you're
I've
right,
never seen
and
you.
I think that would also be good for someone who is quick to correct when it's maybe not always needed. A passive correction would be a better idea for them, where it gives them a chance to take a couple breaths and think about what they're doing rather than going in and correcting
Maybe I
things
do use
that
this.
potentially don't need it.
Sorry, Joe, I did not mean to interrupt. Maybe I do use this like when I'm grooming a dog and it wants to not hold still, and I might hold firmer, and because I always give all my boarding dogs a bath, and I try to do at least I try to, and I do find that some of them struggle, so maybe I do use that there. Maybe that's where I would say I would use one.
I might use it in a dog that was starting to get really frantic about something. But
Yeah.
it would be less of a correction and more of a calming, just lifting them up and giving them something to think about rather than being in that state of panic.
It is
Yeah.
something I will use with certain dogs cutting toenails if they want to bite me.
Yeah, I can see it there for sure. Like I could definitely find myself maybe I do that without consciously knowing I do it.
Yeah.
I was trying to think like over the past couple of weeks, what I have 3 boarding dogs. I have 2 in training and 1 that's just boarding. And I think if I've ever had to meet one, I don't, other than maybe during a grooming session. My buddy Pyro does not like to have his nails done, and I may have held his foot until he relaxed, and then so maybe I did use that. Maybe that's how I teach toenails. Like you said, sometimes it's just going back to your brain and deciding, was this a correction like this? Is this how we're going to define this?
I agree. It's doing something in that moment, then afterwards thinking about it of did it work? Was this right?
Yeah. Because like when we talk, like I posted a video of me doing Clay's toenails, and you're like, this is not at all what I thought you were saying. And so I think that a lot of times when we talk about corrections, people can't always assume what's happening. They really need to see what's happening. And sometimes, and vice versa, sometimes you don't need to see what's happening. You need to hear what is actually going through it. Because when we have conversations, sometimes we put in our mind what we think the other person is saying might not be exactly what they're saying at all.
I think we each need to give an example of a dog we've corrected this week.
I gave a good example with the boxer this morning, trying to eat the duck, because
It was.
that stuff,
Give another one.
it stuck in my mind because I was like, what are you doing? I had to do crazy arms with my golden friend that's boarding because he pulls like a freight train. And he came out and he was pulling, the leash had gotten tight. And I'm like, I have to make slack here because I cannot stop them from ripping my arm out of socket. Jessica was in tears. This dog was pulling on her so hard. And he's owned by an older lady. So it's like, he can't keep doing this. This has got to stop. So I did crazy arms and the leash went everywhere. And he was like, whoa, I've never seen that before. That was the correction I did this week.
What a crazy arms.
Crazy arms are just like where you create slack in the leash to create multiple pops that don't come from the same place. So like the pressure isn't just here, the pressure goes here, here. So you just crazy arms. And then the dogs are like, how about I don't move for a second? And when
So
they
you're
don't move,
moving the dog's collar around with your
they,
arms?
you're just going, whoa, whoa. And the dog's, yeah.
Okay.
So I did crazy arms. And I teach that in pet manners class. We teach crazy arms in pet manners class. And it really what you're trying to do is take the dog that's pulling it to the floor or pulling to whatever it was. In this case, he wanted to go see the cats. And you're changing their attention. So they're going from pulling to, what the heck was that? And they look at me and I'm like, good. And I can stop crazy arms. So they learn to stop crazy arms from happening by giving
Okay.
attention.
Thinking of dogs I've corrected this week, and the only one I can think of is my current darling board and train when she tried to kill me by going after a squirrel. So I was on my bike with her. She's a German Shepherd. And she decided that squirrel was close enough to be the one to worth risking it for. And I slammed on my brakes of my bike and just popped her back, equaling her intensity going forwards probably about 5 times. But that's not exactly a very good correction or example. So I'm going to steal one from a couple of weeks back, which was a boxer that came into my building, and super sweet boxer. I had no idea what happened to her little head in that moment, but she decided, I'm here, I'm going to fight with another dog. And I had a flag that's on the end of a stick, and I whacked my flag in front of her. So it was probably about 3 feet in front of her. I whacked it from her nose height to the ground 5 times and slowly moving in towards her. So she backed up from the other dog. Then I just stopped it. We moved and she decided she'd leave the other dog alone. So that's my 2 examples of corrections this week. Jill, what are yours?
Oh, my dogs are so good, it's hard to come up with a correction.
Liar.
Yesterday morning, we were finishing our walk and we're heading back to the car. When I get close enough to the car, because it's on a main thoroughfare where it's parked, I have the dogs lie down. And Sizzle hits the deck every time and prod is good, but not as good as sizzle. So she stopped, but she didn't lie down. And this might be considered indirect pressure because I just continued my walk towards the car. But when I got close to her, I poked her on the butt with no verbal at all. But that poke in the butt made her go, yoicks. And she hit the deck like she'd been given a second command.
I have a third example. You sparked one. Perfect Pippa was naughty. This never happens. Poor Perfect Pippa. She'll be so embarrassed when I'm talking about her. But we were out hiking and we ran across someone and we were going top speed, came across somebody, and I called her back and she didn't refuse to come, but she carried on 3 steps before she stopped, which isn't good enough. So I said, Pippa here. And then she wouldn't come towards me. She just laid down like, I'm in my spot, mother. Move on. So as person went by, I just calmly went towards her, calmly and slow, because she's very sensitive. I put my hands in her collar, and I extended my arms and stepped back away from her and then said, Pippa, here, and popped her towards my knees. So she came in, and then I kept her there, and I kept my hands in her collar and stepped back again and repeated that 2 more times. That would be Pippa's correction of this week. So that's for a trained, sweet dog that tries hard but was naughty.
And Pippa is still in the closet licking her wounds.
Her mother would have been too.
True. Yes.
Yeah.
Any other corrections you can think of this week, Matthew?
This isn't a correction, but I have to throw this out because it made me laugh. There was an argument on one of the Facebook sites I'm on about dogs pottying on people's lawns. Anyway, I had made a comment and this woman came back at me and said she has an 85-pound golden, and when she decides she wants to pee, there's nothing that you can do about it. And then she said, I see by your profile picture that you have Goldens. They're very stubborn, you must understand. And my first thought was, my female Goldens aren't 85 pounds, for starters. And I wouldn't use stubborn to describe my dogs at all, ever.
I have met a few stubborn Goldens.
Oh, they're out there, absolutely.
But if they're 85 pounds, that probably tells us a lot.
Yeah. But I was very good and I just didn't bother to respond to that one because
The dog food companies must love her.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
She actually follows the instructions on the bag. I have another little puppy this week. So tiny little Rottweiler puppy being fed 4 cups of food a day because that's what's on the bag. And the vet's office had told her to do that. So this poor little thing had such a giant belly on it. It's way too much food for a little dog.
How much is she's 4 months old?
Yes.
That would be far off of what I feed my Goldens. Like when they're doing 3 times a day, it's 3/4 of a cup 3 times a day. For a growing puppy?
3/4 of a cup 3 times a day. Really?
That's what my Goldens are fed when they're, until they go to a twice a day feeding.
So it's a cup and a half twice a day.
3/4 of 1.5, 2 1/4.
Matthew, go ahead.
Larry German Shepherd gets 6 cups a day. 3 in the morning. Yeah. And he's rail thin. But he's got super metabolism.
Wow. He needs more fat.
He's eating, actually he's getting Dine on top of it. So like he gets tablespoons of Dine, a nutritional caloric supplement. But yeah, I'm finding that there's like some dogs are just thin. He's just thin. He's active, he's happy, and he eats good. Like we're not talking about, but I don't feel like I could push any more kibble to him.
Johnny eats a lot. Johnny eats a huge amount.
When he eats.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4 cups a day for a growing Rottweiler doesn't seem like a lot.
Really?
To me, yeah. It depends on how much they're doing, but
You didn't have to pick up her poo.
is it? Yeah, but that's just
It was like
kibble.
3 feet long.
That's kibble poo for you, regardless. Oh, dear.
Any other comments, you two?
I think for me, when we talk about corrections, we just have to realize that you're not always dealing with that person's dog. And like they're really in order to get rid of stigma around corrections, we have to understand that dogs are individuals and that find a trainer that's first tool isn't going to be a hammer. Like dogs are not all nails. So you don't have to be a hammer to everybody. And that it is okay to correct your dog. Like it's okay to correct it's okay to not want to correct your dog. In fact, I like those people better. Like it's
I
easier.
agree.
It's easier to teach somebody to do a correction than it is to pull somebody off of their animal.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think the general public, and this doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying this to a dog owner, but the general public needs to realize that it's not okay for dogs to be hurting their owners
No.
and be
What do you mean?
completely opposed to people, quote, hurting their dogs. People don't have a problem with a dog dragging its owner down the street, wrapping
No.
And
itself around
wrecking
their
its
leg,
neck. Yeah.
making them fall down, jumping up, biting them, pulling on their shirts, whatever. The general public now thinks that's acceptable as long as the person isn't doing anything to stop it.
Yeah, but that's the biggest problem here when what you're speaking about, Jill, is that a lot of people get into dog training because they love dogs. But if you really want to be a good dog trainer, you have to love people.
No,
I
you don't.
agree.
No.
Yes.
Disagree.
You have to want to fix that relationship. And it's not just a canine side. And that's where the slippery slope of purely positive comes because people only care about the dog. They don't care about the human.
That's
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's a balance there, but I should be able to tell my dog
Knock
that's
it
not
off.
acceptable. You're not going to hurt me. Just
You
like
got
I'm not going to hurt you, you're not going to hurt me, but there's a line here.
there is. You know.
I think on this video, this podcast, I'm going to include the video so people could see Matthew throughout.
Oh my God. I'm wondering if Matthew's on drugs.
I'm sorry, I'm partially
You're
because
like, you've been
look, what's really
dancing the
cool
whole
too is
time, Matthew. You're like back and forth.
I've
I'm
been
like,
teaching this German Shepherd, so I've been working on his retrieve while he's here with me, and I had thrown it up against this crate, and he's like trying to get to it. I'm like, "Yeah, buddy, yeah." So like, y'all are talking to him over here. That's what I want to see. That's it, but just been out here playing around.
I just think Matthew needs to cut back on the amphetamines.
He really
actually,
does.
no. So literally, like
He's
I've
quite
been.
twitchy.
No, I'm standing up, and two,
Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot.
I've lost like 9 pounds, so I'm feeling much better.
Jesus, you've lost
I
3 pounds
haven't.
just tonight.
I gained your 9 pounds, but thank you.
I don't have a plan. So I'll be out
All
here
right.
till tonight training dogs.
Good night, you two.
Good
Good
night.
night.
We'll see you next
Thank
Tuesday.
you both.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.